You can't leave that thing out in plain view, Marcus. The bylaws clearly state. It's not just a truck, I said, sharper than I meant. And you don't get to open it like it's your property. Denise Calloway didn't flinch. HOA badge clipped to her cardigan like it meant something. I was checking for compliance. Suspicious vehicles require board review. I leaned against the hood and folded my arms. Suspicious? That's a 1971 Ford F-100. My dad rebuilt it bolt by bolt after his chemo treatments. That motion alert you triggered last night still syncs to my backup server. Her smile froze, subtle, but I saw it. Name's Marcus Rourke, 43. I diagnose machines for a living, mostly engine systems, sometimes flight-rated sensors. The people I work with trust me to find what's broken, even when it hides behind a clean readout. When Dad passed and left me this house, I knew the fight wouldn't be the pipes or the paint. It'd be the people pretending to protect it. Where are you watching from? Because if your HOA's acting like a private security firm too, buckle up. I moved back into Silver Pines Ridge on a Thursday. Weather was forgettable, overcast, a little muggy. What I did remember was the tree line, the curve in the cul-de-sac, and the way the truck looked exactly where we'd left it, beside the red tool shed, under the rusted basketball hoop. Like time hadn't touched it. Like Dad was gonna walk out the back door and toss me the keys. He never did get to drive it after the rebuild. Elena came by that first weekend, brought takeout, dropped her shoes by the door, looked around like she expected ghosts. "You really gonna stay here?" she asked. "Full time?" I nodded. "Someone has to. He didn't build this place for it to get swallowed by meeting minutes and landscaping fines." She glanced out the window. "You're gonna hate Denise." She wasn't wrong. The first notice showed up on Monday. Unpermitted exterior object, non-compliant vehicle. No envelope, just paper taped across the windshield like a warning. The second came Wednesday. Property must maintain consistent aesthetic harmony. Covered vehicles must be stored in enclosed structures. The truck wasn't covered. That was the point. I emailed the board asking which clause they were citing. No reply. Instead, Friday morning, I stepped out to a fresh one taped to the tailgate. Failure to comply with removal request may result in towing at owner's expense. That's when I checked the dash cam backup. Motion alert, 2:11 a.m. The footage was grainy, infrared had kicked in, but the silhouette was clear. Shoulder-length hair, slim frame, beige windbreaker. She walked right up the driveway, keyed the door, glove box open, hand inside. I paused the video and just stared. The breath caught in my throat wasn't fear. It was something older, something colder, like someone had tried to reach into my father's grave and take a piece of him. I didn't go ballistic. That wasn't my wiring. I saved the clip, backed it up 3 ways, created a new folder on my desktop called HOA entry log, labeled the file, unauthorized access 01.move. I wasn't naive. I'd heard the stories. HOA power grabs, surveillance drama, fence paint lawsuits. But this was different. She used a key, which meant she had one, which meant someone voted to give her one, or she made sure no one else got a say. And it didn't stop there. Saturday afternoon, she knocked like nothing happened, clipboard in hand, smile with too many teeth. "I noticed you still haven't relocated the vehicle," she said sweetly. "Just a reminder, compliance protects community value." I didn't invite her in. I just held the still frame up on my phone, her at the driver's door, hand on the handle, no gloves. She didn't blink, but her breath did catch. "You're tampering with personal property," I said. "Let's see how the sheriff feels about that." She started to say something, maybe deny it, maybe spin it, but I closed the door before she could choose, and just like that, the game began. But I didn't plan to play defense. I didn't sleep that night, not out of fear. I just couldn't stop rewinding the footage. The way Denise tilted her head like she belonged there, how she slipped that master key into my father's truck like it was just another Tuesday chore. She rifled through the glove compartment for 7 seconds. That was enough time to read the title, check registration, maybe note the VIN. She left nothing behind, but she took something. Not physically, but something vital. The quiet contract between my family and this land, the idea that what's ours stays ours, The next morning, I transferred the footage to a thumb drive, sealed it in a plastic sleeve, and slipped it under a pile of paperwork in my garage drawer. I wasn't ready to go public, not yet. I needed to understand what I was dealing with. At 11:04 a.m., another email arrived from the HOA server. Subject: Final notice, vehicle non-compliance. Body: Per HOA guidelines, your exterior storage item remains in violation of Article 9A. Failure to remove it within 72 hours may result in third-party towing at the homeowner's expense. Towing. She was really going there. The email had no signature, but the metadata showed her user ID in the header field. DCALLOWY_HOAPRES at silverpines.org. Sloppy. I screenshotted it and saved it to the new folder, HOA_threats_2024. By noon, I was at the county clerk's office, not because I expected them to do anything, just to pull the land records, double-check boundaries, titles, and any vehicle ordinances filed under Silver Pine's charter. The girl behind the counter looked half asleep until I mentioned the phrase private access keys. Her eyes snapped up. Wait, you mean she entered your vehicle? I nodded. I've got it on camera. She looked like she wanted to whistle but didn't. That's not an HOA thing. That's sheriff's territory. Working on it, I said. Just need to have my facts lined up first. When I stepped outside, the sun was sharp, the kind of heat that cuts through your shirt without warning. I stood there for a second, watching two kids ride scooters past the fountain near City Hall. It made me ache a little. Dad used to take me here on Fridays after he picked me up from the shop. He always said this town was small enough to be decent, big enough to stay dangerous. I drove back to the house and found Elena waiting on the porch, arms crossed, sipping something from a can that was definitely not soda. I brought backup, she said, lifting her phone. Legal group chat. You want a paralegal, a nurse, or a pissed-off millennial with Wi-Fi? I cracked a smile. All three. She followed me inside, eyes flicking toward the truck as we passed it. You sure you don't want to keep it in the garage? She asked quietly. She went through the glove box. If I hide it, it'll look like I'm guilty. Elena hesitated at the threshold. You're not, but she's got years of paper and process on her side. You've got one video and a lot of nerve. I shrugged. Worked for Dad. That shut her up. Inside, I pulled up the footage again, showed her the exact moment Denise slipped the key in. Elena leaned forward. That's the HOA president? Yep. Can we overlay timestamps, maybe some metadata? I already did, I said, flipping over to the folder. I also pulled the server header from her last threat. Her email ID shows up in the payload. Elena whistled this time. You're building a war file. No, I said. I'm building insurance. Outside, a car rolled by, slowly. Gray sedan. HOA sticker in the corner of the windshield. Denise. Or one of her little clipboard disciples. She didn't stop. Just drove past like she had X-ray vision and already knew what drawer I'd stashed the thumb drive in. Elena muttered, She knows she got caught. Bet she's waiting to see if you'll do something stupid. I'm not, I said. But you're gonna do something, she added. I didn't answer. She smiled. Good. We stayed quiet for a beat. The ceiling fan hummed. Somewhere down the street, someone's sprinkler sputtered like it was coughing out its last breath. I pulled a folder from the file cabinet, Dad's old papers. Inside was a printout from a 2009 HOA meeting agenda. His handwriting in the margins. Don't trust Calloway. She's after more than fences. Even in death, he saw her coming. I closed the folder. I wasn't scared anymore. I was watching. And this time, I was writing everything down. I showed up at the HOA office the next morning, like I was just another good citizen trying to follow the rules. Not that I expected anything productive. I wasn't there to argue. I was there to see who blinked. The HOA building sat wedged between a fake stone fountain and a flagpole that hadn't flown anything in weeks. It smelled like recycled carpet and citrus disinfectant inside, a place built for bland meetings and quiet power grabs. Behind the counter was a guy I'd never noticed before. Mid-30s, pressed collar, dark circles under his eyes like they were tattooed on. He looked up as I approached, lips tight like maybe he'd been told not to smile too much. You're Marcus Rourke? He asked. Yeah, got a minute? He didn't answer, just motioned toward a sign-in clipboard and slipped a pen across the desk. His fingers trembled as he let go. I watched it happen, barely there, but real. A twitch at the knuckle, a hesitation between movement and retreat. The nameplate on his desk said, Joel Nguyen, Secretary. He glanced at the paperwork in my hand, but didn't reach for it. Just need to contest a violation, I said, tapping the towing notice, and ask a few questions about keyholder protocol. He blinked, once, then twice. I'm not the one who... That would be a board level. You'll need to file Form D-12. Already did, I replied. But thanks. He hesitated, then turned toward a filing cabinet behind him. Opened the top drawer, paused. His shoulders rose, held, dropped. When he turned back, he had a blank envelope in his hand. No label? He slid it toward me like it was radioactive. It was dropped off yesterday. No return address. Might be a duplicate notice. It wasn't. Inside was a typed letter on HOA letterhead. No signature. No fine. Just one sentence in bold. Non-cooperative behavior may result in modified oversight. Modified oversight? That wasn't a term from any bylaw I'd read. It sounded like something from a parole officer's playbook. Who sent this? Joel stared at the envelope like it might answer for him. I don't know. I just logged the incoming. But the way his voice dropped, barely audible by the end, told me plenty. I didn't push. I just nodded once and walked out. But I kept my eye on him the whole way back to the door, and he kept his head down. When I stepped outside, I spotted Denise across the street, leaning against her Lexus SUV, phone to her ear, sunglasses reflecting everything but emotion. She didn't wave, didn't flinch, just talked into the phone with all the ease of someone who already expected the outcome. I didn't engage. I got in my truck and left, but I couldn't shake the envelope. Back at the house, Elena was on the porch again, eating an apple like she was keeping guard. You look like you saw a ghost, she said. Not a ghost, just a man with a conscience. She squinted. Joel? I nodded. Hands shook like he was passing a confession. She tossed the apple core over the rail. So what's next? File a police report? Already in motion. But it's not enough. I showed her the new letter, her brow furrowed. Modified oversight? That's not real language. Exactly. We sat for a beat. That's when I saw it. Across the lawn, 2 houses down, George Palver, neighbor since forever. Used to be Dad's poker buddy. Had a running tab of favors that always ended with him borrowing tools and not returning them. And now, he was standing next to Denise, grinning, handing her something. Maybe a folder. Maybe nothing. But the look on his face burned worse than the letter. Elena, I said quietly, do you remember when Dad helped George replace his fence for free? Paid for the lumber and all? She nodded, eyes narrowing. He told me George would stand up for us if anything ever got messy. Well, she muttered, he just sold you out for a handshake and HOA gossip. I stood up and walked back inside before I could break something. Inside the garage, I grabbed the crowbar from under the workbench, not to use it, but to feel its weight, to remind myself that leverage takes time to build. I didn't have enough proof yet, but I had pressure points, Joel's hands, George's face, and Denise's silence, which meant something was cracking. Now I just had to watch where the fault lines ran. Ever gotten a letter that wasn't about the rule, but about control? I just got handed a blank envelope with a threat no one wants to admit they wrote. Who do you trust in your neighborhood when even the signatures go missing? Let me know where you're watching from. And if your HOA ever crossed a line that made you stop playing nice. I didn't bring the crowbar to the sheriff's office, but I wanted to. Instead, I brought a thumb drive, a manila folder, and a simple question. When does code enforcement become criminal trespass? The lobby was quiet. One sleepy deputy at the front desk, a coffee maker dripping in the background, and the scent of floor wax that hadn't quite dried. I gave my name, and within 10 minutes, I was sitting in a side room across from Deputy Alicia Torrens. No uniform swagger, no smirk. Just a calm, squared-off woman in a dark green polo, with a pen clipped to the collar, and the kind of stare that made you tell the truth, whether you meant to or not. You said in the report that you had video of the incident, she asked. Yeah, from 2 angles, truck cam and home motion feed. I handed her the drive. She didn't plug it in, just slipped it into a case and nodded. And you're saying she used a key? Master key. Opened the door, reached into the glove box, then left. Didn't knock, didn't call, no emergency. Any idea what she was looking for? No clue. Registration maybe. Title. She was calm, like it wasn't the first time. That part made her pause. Just a flicker of her jaw tightening. Has this happened before? I wouldn't know, but I can tell you I didn't authorize it. And she's already issued threats about removing the truck. Was the vehicle tagged or marked for removal by the HOA? Yeah, but the bylaws don't authorize physical entry. Not without notice, and definitely not without cause. She leaned back, arms folded. HOA's been busy this year. You're not the first. That stopped me. Not the first what? Let's just say a few reports have come through. Different complaints, pet citations, camera blind spots, citations that felt retaliatory. But no one had hard footage. You might. I didn't say anything. Just let the silence fill the room while her words sank in. She glanced down at the folder I brought. What's that? Letter from the HOA. No signature. Just a veiled threat about modified oversight. Their secretary handed it to me like it was hot glass. She flipped through the page, brows furrowing. This language is designed to scare, not inform. They want you guessing. Yeah, well, I said, standing slowly. I'm done guessing. She nodded. We'll log this as a formal report. I'll contact the HOA president for a statement. You're gonna warn her? She has the right to respond. But that's not the same as warning. You're not alone in this, Mr. Rourke. Just stay careful and keep recording. Outside, the wind had picked up. Not a storm, but the kind that whispered across your neck like someone testing your defenses. I drove home slower than usual, checking every car in the rear view. When I pulled into the driveway, Elena was in the garage, rearranging boxes. Her ponytail looked like it had survived combat, and her hoodie was flecked with cobwebs. Find anything? I asked, stepping out. She held up a rusted tin lunchbox. You mean besides a family of spiders and a VHS tape labeled Christmas '95? Not yet. I glanced toward the truck, still parked, still whole, still mine. You good? She asked, voice dropping. I nodded, then hesitated. Deputy said I'm not the first to report her. Elena raised an eyebrow. But the first with proof? Looks that way. She leaned against the workbench. So what now? I opened a cabinet and pulled out the old notebook Dad used to keep in the garage. Oil-stained, corners curled, but still legible. Inside, page after page of parts lists, calibration notes, and one scribbled reminder. Trust the system only after you build your own. I placed it on the table between us. I'm going to start building, I said. Building what? Evidence? Leverage? Maybe both. Her smile didn't reach her eyes, but it was real. I'll bring the coffee. Later that night, I set up a second motion cam, angled toward the sidewalk instead of the truck. Just in case. Denise didn't come by, but someone else did. Around 11:40, the footage caught a figure walking past, stopping briefly at my mailbox, then continuing like nothing happened. Next morning, I found a new letter. Citation: non-harmonious visual obstruction. Description: the vehicle color is jarring to the visual cohesion of the street. They were citing the truck for being red. I laughed. It wasn't funny, but I laughed anyway, because someone was getting desperate. I stood in the garage staring at that citation, non-harmonious visual obstruction, like it was a parody someone forgot to make funny. They fined me for red paint. I tossed the letter on the workbench and grabbed Dad's old flashlight. Not the sleek rechargeable kind. This one took D batteries and let out a dull hum when it flickered on. Heavy, scratched, still smelled faintly like motor oil and cedar. There was something I hadn't checked yet. When we moved his stuff after the funeral, we avoided the basement. Not because it was haunted, just heavy. The kind of place that had its own breath. Dad used to disappear down there for hours, come back with dusty binders and phrases like, "Don't let paper scare you, it's just static in tree form." I never understood half of what he meant, but I remembered his rituals. Lamp on first, breaker switch flipped halfway, and a pair of thick gloves always nearby. Now, 4 years later, I was descending into that same basement with creaky steps underfoot and a flashlight that barely liked me. At the bottom, it smelled like dust and time, that cold, metallic scent of tools that haven't been touched since someone died. The light from the single overhead bulb stuttered, on, off, then back again, with a buzz like it was thinking twice. "Don't die on me," I muttered. The far wall had Dad's old filing cabinet. 3 drawers. The bottom one was always stuck. I remember watching him kick it once, muttering about hinges that lied. I crouched and yanked. Nothing. Kicked it once. It groaned open like it hadn't been touched since the Bush administration. Inside, folders, labeled by hand in his blocky print. Silver Pines, 2002 to 2008. Then, HOA Caresp. Private. And finally, dispute log, Callaway. I froze, tugged that last one out and set it on the workbench under the buzzing bulb. It held copies of letters, old ones, yellowed, some smudged with what looked like coffee or rust. One was from Denise, dated 2007, complaining about non-standard fence paint. Another was a memo about unauthorized structural improvements, referring to the custom awning Dad built that summer. Each document was marked with small red dots in the corner. Dad's way of flagging escalation. One sheet near the bottom caught my eye. A handwritten affidavit, signed and dated in blue ink, notarized. It read, "This letter documents a formal protest against unauthorized key duplication conducted by HOA President Denise Callaway without full board vote, in violation of Article 3B, Emergency Access Protocol." At the bottom, signature, Arthur Rourke. I exhaled, slowly. He knew. Not just that she was dangerous, but how. Next to, it was an old mini cassette recorder, one of those tiny things you had to flip over to finish the conversation. Tucked beside it was a labeled tape, Callaway M&TG, 2009. The power cord had long since vanished, but the recorder still had batteries inside. I pressed play. Click, whir, static. Then Dad's voice, clear as if he were behind me. "She says it's for emergencies, but I saw the new master list. Only her name's on it. No vote, no minutes." A pause. Then another voice. Lower, tight. "She said it's just easier that way. She's rewriting the rules in real time," Dad snapped, "and no one's stopping her." Static swallowed the rest. I stood there, staring at the tape. Felt like he was in the room with me. Not comforting, sharp. Like he left a blueprint and was waiting for me to pick up the pen. I pressed stop, grabbed the file folder, cassette, and affidavit, marched back up the stairs, past the smell of old wood and dust, and dropped everything on the kitchen table with a dull thud. Elena looked up from her laptop, startled. "What happened?" I held up the recorder. Dad tried to stop her in '09, left a trail, voice, paper, signatures. She's been playing the same game for over a decade. She didn't say anything, didn't have to, because we both knew this wasn't about a truck anymore. This was about power and what happens when someone holds it too long. I didn't sleep that night. The recorder sat on the kitchen table, still half covered in dust, and Dad's voice. The affidavit was beside it, one folded page that made the whole HOA house of cards feel a little less untouchable. Elena had gone quiet again. That wasn't new. Grief lived differently in both of us. She watched me pace once or twice, then disappeared upstairs, muttering something about not letting the dog out alone. I knew it wasn't about the dog. I walked out to the truck. It was just after midnight. Street was quiet, but that kind of fake quiet, like the neighborhood held its breath whenever Denise wasn't watching. The porch light buzzed behind me. I sat on the tailgate. The metal creaked the same way it always had. I ran my hand along the edge of the bed, past the bolt Dad replaced with a coin washer, past the scar in the paint where he'd once leaned his belt sander a little too close. Everything about the truck felt like him, practical, purpose-built, no polish, no frills, just like his plans. I reached under the driver's seat and pulled out the old backup module I'd installed when I moved in. I hadn't used it since setup. It was a spare drive, tethered to the truck's interior camera and audio sensor. No Wi-Fi, just motion-triggered storage, manual review only. I took it inside and plugged it into my laptop. 5 logs. 4 were blank. Wind, bugs, the usual late-night silence. The 5th, a clip from 10 days ago. Timestamp, 3:46 a.m. 2 days before the first notice. 1 day before I moved the truck back into the driveway. and there she was, Denise Calloway. Walking up the sidewalk like she owned the slab, headlamp on, holding her phone in one hand, and what looked like, a clipboard in the other. She didn't open the door this time. She just stood beside the truck, staring at the window for 20 full seconds. Then she spoke. "This is the last one. Once this is gone, the rest will fall in line." That was it. No context. Just a whisper meant for no one. Or maybe whoever was listening through the call. I froze the frame. Her face glowed ghost pale in the infrared. I hit save. Named the file Denise Intent log 05.mp4. And just like that, the tone shifted. I wasn't reacting anymore. I was investigating. I didn't go back to bed. Instead, I opened a new document, titled it Strategic Timeline, HOA, Infractions/Violations. I started entering every incident: letter, notice, citation, footage, timestamp, source. By 3 a.m., I had a 19-entry sheet and a headache. But I also had patterns. The violations came in pairs, always with a weekend buffer. Each followed a late-night HOA patrol logged by Joel's internal schedule, which I'd seen once in the corner of his desk. That meant it wasn't random. It was scheduled. Weaponized structure. At 3:12 a.m., I sent an encrypted copy of the timeline to Deputy Torrens. No message, just subject line, follow-up evidence, Marcus Rourke. At 7:08 a.m., I got a reply. Received, reviewing, keep documenting, don't act yet. Too late, I muttered, because I already was. At noon, I showed up at the one person Dad never trusted, but always used when things got messy. Howard Flint, old lawyer, white hair, sharper tongue, handled Dad's property, taxes, will, and one very quiet HOA countersuit back in 2008. I'd forgotten about it, until the basement gave me a reminder. "Thought you'd never come," he said, waving me in with a mug that smelled more like bourbon than coffee. I dropped the affidavit and the tape recorder on his desk. He squinted. "He kept this?" "He kept everything," I said. Flint played the tape, said nothing. Just leaned back and listened to Dad's voice unravel Denise's quiet coup like he was reading a playbook. At the end, Flint nodded once. "Your father knew what she was, but he didn't want it to turn into a war. That's why he stopped." I looked him dead in the eye. "I'm not stopping." He smiled, barely. "Didn't think you would. Let me make a few calls." As I left his office, I felt something I hadn't in weeks. Ever kept something just because it might matter later? My dad did. A tape, a signature, a file buried in a rusted drawer. And now, it's the reason Denise can't hide behind her title anymore. If you've ever found proof tucked where no one expected, drop your story in the comments. And tell me, where are you watching from? It was raining. Not hard, just that slow, steady drizzle that makes every sound softer and your thoughts louder. I'd just stepped out of Flint's office, his voice still echoing in my head. "Don't lead with the tape. Use it when it stings." I was halfway to my truck when I saw someone standing beside it, back turned, umbrella drooping like it had already given up. "Joel," I called out. He flinched before he turned, didn't look at me right away. His left hand was stuffed deep into his jacket pocket, the other gripping a plastic grocery bag like it held something radioactive. "I shouldn't be here," he muttered. "You already are." Joel's shoulders sagged. He shuffled closer, shoes splashing in the shallow puddles, and handed me the bag without ceremony. Inside, a small black USB drive, no label, no case, just taped shut like it was trying to stay silent. "What is this?" I asked. He didn't answer right away, just stared out across the street at nothing. His voice, when it came, was low and flat. I copied the board meeting logs from the last 6 months, private recordings. She doesn't know I kept backups. I blinked. "Wait, you recorded the meetings?" "Yeah, not just minutes, actual audio. We're supposed to, technically, but most presidents wipe them. She didn't know I automated the backup system years ago." He finally looked at me. "You're the first person I've seen push back." I wanted to say something sharp, something righteous, but I didn't. I just asked, "Why now?" Joel's jaw twitched. He took a shaky breath. "Your dad tried once, and when she buried him in letters, we all let her. I typed most of them myself. I thought it was harmless, just order, just keeping things neat." His eyes were glassy now, but it stopped being about rules a long time ago. He stepped back from the truck like it might bite him. If she finds out, I didn't give this to you. She won't hear it from me, I said. Joel turned and walked off, umbrella dragging behind him like it didn't care anymore. Back inside, I plugged the USB into a quarantined laptop and opened the drive. 11 folders, each marked by month. Inside, audio files, hundreds, names, dates, timestamps. I clicked one at random, February 3rd, emergency vote recording. Denise's voice came on mid-sentence. We don't need a full board consensus. Proxy majority from January rolls over. Just flag the objection column inactive. Another voice unsure. Isn't that out of sequence? Denise, sharper. It's efficient. These people don't read the bylaws anyway. Click. I scrubbed through more clips, each one worse than the last. She called community members non-compliant parasites, mocked a veteran homeowner who requested a railing extension, laughed when someone's late fee triggered a lien notice, and in one clip, March 8th, she referred to my truck by name. Once we clear Work's vehicle, the rest will follow. Nobody wants to be the second domino. I stared at the screen, not blinking, not breathing. She wasn't just enforcing. She was orchestrating. I hit export, created a folder, Operation Domino. Yeah, I gave it a name. Because this wasn't a neighborhood tiff anymore. It was a pattern, documented, deliberate. I compiled a master list, cross-referenced complaint letters with timestamps, used Dad's old binder notes to match phrasing. Her playbook hadn't changed in 15 years, just the faces she ran it against. I sent a compressed folder to Flint, another to Deputy Torrens. Third went to my off-site server with a dead man switch, just in case anything happened. Then I went back to the truck, popped the hood, checked the battery relay. Not because anything was wrong, because I needed to do something with my hands that didn't involve watching people be gutted on paper. As I tightened a bolt that didn't need tightening, I looked up at the tree over the driveway. The one Dad had refused to cut down even when the HOA begged, said it gave the place roots. And it did. That tree and this truck, they were gonna outlast her. The letter came folded inside a water bill envelope. No stamp, no return address, just slid into my mailbox like Denise thought she was subtle. I opened it in the kitchen with one hand while flipping eggs with the other. Due to recent complaints, it read, "You are hereby notified that all exterior modifications, including surveillance devices, are in violation of Covenant 9B and must be removed within 72 hours. I laughed out loud. Elena glanced up from the counter, where she was feeding her cat treats like they were jury bribes. They're after your cameras now? I held up the letter. Apparently they're a threat to aesthetic harmony. Did you remind them that 2 of those cameras were installed after the last mailbox thefts? Didn't get the chance. They skipped the warning and went straight to demands. Classic Denise. I snapped a photo of the letter, attached it to the growing digital file I'd titled Callaway Index, and emailed a copy to Deputy Torrens with a note. Subject, formal retaliation pattern, now targeting legal surveillance. By the time I finished breakfast, Torrens had replied. Saw it, logged, confirmed pattern, keep collecting. That afternoon, Joel showed up again. He didn't knock, just kinda lingered by the porch swing like it was a confessional booth. She's doubling down, he said quietly. You know what that means. She's scared. She's cornered. Same thing, I replied, sipping from my thermos. Joel looked over at the truck parked under the oak tree. You know she hates that thing more than you. Because she can't move it with a vote. He rubbed his neck. She's pushing the board to issue an emergency vote. Wants to suspend all new petition hearings under some fabricated safety clause. Let me guess. Claimed I tampered with community. Lines? Joel's eyes tightened. Said your wiring posed a fire hazard. I didn't answer. I just stood, walked inside, and came back out holding a folded schematic, dated 2011, with my dad's name still signed on the bottom. It showed the electrical layout of our property. Approved, permitted, code compliant. Think they'll like this copy at the sheriff's office? Joel didn't smile, but his voice dropped to a whisper. You need to talk to Farah again. She saw something. That made me pause. What kind of something? He shook his head. Didn't say, just that it's about the lockbox. A cold pulse hit my chest. The HOA lockbox. The one nailed to the community bulletin board that only board members were supposed to access. Only board members. I headed straight to Farah's just after dark. She opened the door before I even raised my hand to knock. "You're not gonna like this?" she said, ushering me in. She led me to her back room, pulled up a file on her tablet, and tapped play. It was security cam footage from 2 nights ago. Grainy, but usable. Time-stamped. Clear enough to make out movement near the HOA board. And Denise? She wasn't alone. A man in a gray hoodie passed her something. Small, metallic. She unlocked the box, took out a stack of envelopes. Put in a new one. Farah froze the frame. "You see the top label?" I leaned in. The envelope was stamped. Board reinstatement ballot. Joel Nguyen. I stepped back. "She's staging a board vote. Or rigging one," Farah said. "Because Joel didn't authorize anything." I asked. I clenched my jaw. He's not even on her side. She's trying to remove him before he can be. That night, I pulled out the old cedar toolbox from under the workbench in Dad's shed. Inside was the flip phone he used for backups, calls, recordings, photos. I'd never wiped it. Something told me not to. I charged it, scanned through its memory. On the third folder, I found a voice file labeled ALT-MTG-2016. I hit play. It was Denise. Back then, her voice was younger, brasher. She was caught saying, "We don't need quorum if we get the votes printed early. No one's going to double-check ballots after the meeting starts." I stared at the phone like it had grown teeth. They'd been faking elections for years, and my dad knew. This time, Denise wasn't just exposed. She was recorded, time-stamped, and traceable, and she didn't know I had it. Ever find out the truth wasn't just buried? It was documented, but no one bothered to look. My dad didn't just suspect them. He recorded them. And now I've got their voices, their votes, and their lies all backed up. If you've ever found a file or voicemail that changed everything, tell me your story. And where are you tuning in from tonight? The next morning, I walked into the county registrar's office with the cedar toolbox under my arm and a copy of my dad's old permit packet clipped tight to the top. Nobody looked twice, just another guy with old papers and a stare that meant business. "Need to certify a recording," I told the clerk. She blinked, then tilted her head. "For what purpose?" "Public board election interference." That made her sit straighter. I handed over the phone and the paperwork. "There's a file on here, dated, unedited. You'll want to hear it." She slipped the flip phone into a small audio dock behind the counter, pulled out headphones, and within 30 seconds, her lips parted. "You want a certified transcript of this?" "And a notarized timestamp of the original file," I added. "That voice belongs to the current HOA president." I left with a certified document folder and an appointment with the assistant district attorney for Friday morning. Back home, Elena was on the porch swing again, fiddling with a small black box. "Thought you'd want this," she said, holding it out. "Backup drive from the Nest Cam. Farah dropped it off before heading to work. Said you'd know why it matters." I plugged it in at my desk and opened the most recent files. There it was, footage from last week, clear as daylight. Denise reaching into the HOA lockbox, her hands trembling just slightly as she swapped envelopes. The video synced perfectly with Farah's earlier tablet footage. Now I had a match. Video, voice, and paper trail. 3 forms of proof. 3 nails in Denise's administrative coffin. But that wasn't the part that stopped me cold. It was what happened after she left. Joel. He approached the box, stared at it, didn't touch it, but he saw the switch, and he didn't stop it. He turned, walked back toward his house, and disappeared. I sat there, watching the loop for almost 20 minutes. Not because I was angry, because I recognized the look on his face. He'd already decided. He was going to act. Just not yet. I stood and walked to the shed. In the old fireproof safe under the bench, tucked next to the folded deed and Dad's discharge military badge, was a USB drive I hadn't touched in 3 years. Labeled, Confirmation, Layouts plus Records. Dad's backup archive. Inside, years of HOA minutes, email threads, and PDF scans of every bylaw change they ever tried to sneak past residents. And 2 files labeled simply, Voided Ballots and Unfiled Fines. I started skimming. Denise had been issuing fines that never reached accounting, thousands of dollars, and the same names came up repeatedly. People who'd spoken at meetings, run against her board, questioned her authority. All logged, never filed, never deposited into HOA accounts. Because they never got past her desk. She'd created her own shadow enforcement system, one that bled residents dry and left no paper trail, until now. By sundown, I had a digital binder full of evidence, titled, sorted, cross-referenced, and I wasn't the only one watching anymore. Farah called. She knows. I figured. She's texting the board, calling emergency quorum. Let her, I said. Let her get every vote she needs. Farah hesitated. You're not going to stop her. I smiled, voice low. Number. I'm going to let her walk straight into the trap. There was silence. Then Farah whispered, Joel wants to meet. Where? The old clubhouse. Midnight. I paused. He chose the place? Yeah. That meant something. That meant he was done staying silent. I grabbed the printout of the voice recording transcript, tucked it into a leather folder with the footage screenshots, and sealed it with a paperclip. Midnight couldn't come fast enough, because for once, they were the ones scrambling. The clubhouse was darker than I remembered. The floodlight near the gazebo flickered, then died completely as I stepped through the side gate. Midnight had come quiet, heavy, the kind of hour where secrets get sick of hiding. Joel was already inside, pacing behind the old ping-pong table like it owed him something. He didn't turn when I walked in, didn't speak, just ran his hand along the folded chairs stacked in the corner like he was trying to feel a version of himself he left there years ago. You picked this place for a reason, I said, leaning against the wall. He stopped. It's where she made us vote her in, the first time. I waited. Joel finally turned, and his face wasn't conflicted anymore. It was tired, hollowed out, but certain. She told us it'd be easier, he started, voice cracked. Said if we just signed off on the motion to consolidate finance oversight, we could cut half the paperwork. Fewer disputes, she said. Quicker approvals. She lied. She always lies, he said quietly. He pulled a folded envelope from his jacket. Not sealed, not pristine. Just worn paper that had been carried too long. I didn't stop her when she swapped the ballots, he admitted. Didn't touch the box, didn't say a word, but I recorded it. My chest went still. He opened the envelope. Inside, a micro SD card, taped to a handwritten note. I didn't know what to do with it, kept telling myself someone else would step up, that maybe you'd just let it go. I took the card. You really think I'd let it go after what she did to my dad? Joel's jaw worked tight. Number? I just hoped you'd be smarter about how far you'd push. I held up the transcript. This isn't pushing. This is accountability. He didn't argue. Outside, headlights swept across the empty lot. Farah's car. Joel opened the side door and let her in, his shoulders twitching at the sound of gravel under tires. She handed me her tablet, live stream ready, mic already syncing. You ready for this? She asked, eyes sharp. I looked at the backup camera feed running in split screen. HOA boardroom. Denise in her red blazer, chairing an unscheduled midnight meeting. Her voice floated through the feed. We'll make this quick. We've had a sudden security breach, and we need a motion to approve emergency powers. Farah tapped her screen. Go! I hit the audio share. Denise's voice stopped mid-sentence, on both screens. Because on the feed, our audio was overriding hers. Board members, I said into the mic. This is Michael Landry, resident property owner and, unlike some of you, still bound by the law. Denise's head whipped toward the camera. You are hearing a recording from your president, obtained legally, backed by time-stamped certification, and now being reviewed by the assistant district attorney. A pause, long enough for the board to glance at one another. You'll also receive a packet tomorrow morning containing scanned copies of unfiled fines, embezzled fee records, and evidence of forged signatures. Denise stood. Cut the feed. But Farah was already rerouting it through 2 local community channels. Joel whispered, she's not in control anymore, and she knew it. The board started to argue. The treasurer, Marla, stood up and pushed her chair back. I moved to suspend the current president pending investigation. Denise snapped, You don't have that power. Don't need power, Marla shot back. Just a majority. 4 hands went up, then 5, then silence. Denise backed away from the table, muttering, red-faced, eyes darting around like she could still find a thread to yank. She couldn't, because truth, when it shows up fully clothed and carrying receipts, doesn't leave much wiggle room. Joel sat down across from me in the clubhouse. "I'm sorry," he said quietly. "You're late," I replied, but not useless. We both watched as Farah locked the backup drive in a steel box and handed me the key. "This goes in the safe," she said. I nodded, and for the first time in weeks, my breath didn't feel like it was rationed. The final vote went through before sunrise. Denise was suspended, temporarily, they said, but the board's silence told me the word they meant was permanently. Farah stayed back to handle the press tip-off. Joel left without a word, his head low but lighter. And me? I walked home, didn't drive, didn't call anyone. Just walked the long loop around the lake, past the lot where the new HOA security cameras blinked like they were confused who they worked for now, past the broken curb still unfixed after 2 years of meetings, and up to the porch swing my father built with his own hands, back when people still brought each other lemonade instead of legal threats. The morning light made the wood glow soft. I ran my fingers across the same carved initials I used to trace as a kid. ML plus JL, burned into the underside. Michael Landry and James Landry. "Dad, you were right," I muttered, sitting back. That swing had been his refuge. Now it was mine. I opened the small folder Farah handed me before I left. Inside, a formal response from the county recorder's office, attached to a new declaration of easement access, filed under my name. It was official now. The pathway Denise had tried to seal off was mine again. But the real win? The neighbors who showed up that afternoon. One by one, they came. People who hadn't said a word during all the fines and letters, knocking gently, offering not just thanks, but copies of emails, photos of letters, minutes from past meetings. "You gave us our nerve back," one of them said, passing me a USB stick with years of digital HOA correspondence. "We just needed someone to go first." I took every file. Every whispered complaint turned time-stamped proof, and with Farah's help, we turned it into something more permanent, a public transparency portal, hosted independently, legally compliant, immutable. The next board meeting had over 70 attendees. Marla called it an awakening. I called it overdue. Even Joel stood up. I moved to dissolve the special finance subcommittee created under Denise's term and revert oversight to the full board. Unanimous vote, no hesitation. When it came time to nominate a new president, I didn't raise my hand, didn't need to. Farah did, and every single person voted her in. Afterward, as the meeting let out, she walked up to me on the sidewalk. "You're not done, you know," she said, her smile half smirk, half warning. I wasn't planning to be. She held out her phone, showed me a post on the transparency portal, a comment someone left under our first public report. "This is what HOAs were supposed to be. Thank you, James Landry." My throat caught. "Guess they think he's still doing the work," I said. Farah shrugged. "Maybe he is, through you." That night, I sat on the porch swing again. No more envelope under my door, no more fake fines, just wind, creaking wood, and a kind of quiet my father always said was worth fighting for. It wasn't just about the easement. It never was. It was about dignity, the kind they tried to erase one forged form at a time, and legacy. Not the kind you hang in frames, but the kind that lives in old swing bolts, faded initials, and stubborn sons who don't scare easy. Turns out the thing they feared most wasn't the recording, I whispered. It was remembering we were here before them. And we weren't going anywhere. Because truth doesn't knock, it reclaims. Have you ever stood your ground when no one else would? Or maybe you're still fighting, quietly, persistently, in your own way. Drop your story in the comments. You're not alone. Tell me where you're watching from and what legacy you're protecting.